Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I'm your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts in the world, and honestly, it is all because of my incredible guests. I am just here to facilitate the conversation, and I am honored and blessed to share time with people who are at the top of their game, and they come on this show and others like it, willing to help you get to where you want to be in life and in business. Now, these are not people who hold back. Their goal is to share with us the essence of peak performance. And today, talk about peak performance, I get to welcome back Dom Slice, call sign Slice Teich, to the show. He's been here before. Be sure you go find that one, and I'll give you the title to it in just a minute. But Dom says that goal-oriented individuals get frustrated when rigid structures, slow processes, long-winded programs, I'm getting tired just reading this because he's describing me, and adherence to unnecessary protocols get in the way when there are really no deliverable outcomes. So fighter pilots are trained to make split decisions at 800 plus miles per hour, and those quick decision-making skills can be incredibly useful in high-performance professions. So Dom has created the largest online group of fighter pilots who guide action takers in short, impactful steps so that they can control their own successes and avoid the wrong path to failure. I'm going to let Dom tell you the rest of the story, and I have his book, Single Seat Wisdom. I can't talk, Dom. You have to do all the talking. Single Seat Wisdom, Volume 2. I have Volume 1 as well, but right now I'm looking at Volume 2. So go back and find our earlier episode called Single Seat Fighter Jet Mindset. It was a fascinating conversation. Dom, welcome back to Your Partner in Success Radio.
Thanks, Denise. I'm really excited to be here again.
Well, we had such a fascinating talk, and when I say fascinating, you talked and I scribbled. I was writing down notes like a crazy person. And as it turns out, I had just not too long before you came on the show watched for the very first time Top Gun. I had never seen it. I'm not really a movie person. And I had also gone to the theater to see Top Gun Maverick, which I now own, and I've watched multiple times. And I watched it over last weekend, and I was thinking about you going, how do these people put their bodies through that? It was shocking to me. Again, I've watched it several times. I'm still shocked.
Yeah. It's kind of it's like the most intense roller coaster ride you could possibly imagine. And then as you're on that most extreme roller coaster ride, drop a gorilla on your body.
That's what it looked like. And you know what really got to me was when the plane would finally land on the carrier and your bodies would just snap forward. That to me is like instant concussion. I had a headache just watching it.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the maybe retired or older fighter pilots that are, they would want some recognition for this skill, because I have not done it and I have no intention or want to do it. But landing on a carrier is incredibly difficult back in the day. Nowadays, all the aircraft are automated, so the computers and the automation essentially take off and land the aircraft on the carrier. But back in the day, you can imagine, I've heard some horror stories of really bad weather coming back to land. It's at night. It's raining. The boat, the end of the deck is hitting these waves that are, making the ship go up and down, 30 feet. It sounds terrifying. I have no intention of doing that. But the pilots of old that had to do that, my hat's off to them, because that sounds incredibly difficult and like nerve-wracking.
It's nerve-wracking to watch. and I knew it
Yeah.
was a movie, but yeah, and that got me to thinking about you and the work that you do and the work that you have done. I mean, you're working with pilots, athletes, business owners, and students. I mean, you're doing an awful lot of work out there now. In fact, you're an Amazon best-selling author. You're a business owner. I want to talk to you about that. An entrepreneur and a civilian military instructor pilot. And this is the most important thing I think I want to get out of you today is that you know that busy individuals and teams struggle, big-time struggle, with information overload. And you couldn't have said it better. That's exactly right. I mean, I am by myself. I have a small team of contractors. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm overloaded every day. And you know who's the worst part overloading me? Me.
You.
I'm guilty. Yep. I have to keep saying, Denise, take a seat. Go sit down. Stop thinking.
Yep.
So let's talk about information overload. And before we get going, tell people a little bit about yourself that I might have missed that you think is important, to this conversation, and then I'm just going to mute you and let you run.
Yeah, I think the thing up front, kind of going back to how does a fighter pilot land a fighter jet on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and could I do that? And I think the answer is with any sort of training, right? So fighter pilots go through training, and it starts with the blocking and tackling. Okay, so all of the skills that you use are the basic skills. That's what you train, and you do it over and over and over and over. And then as you build those skills, you add more to it, and that's what you do in business and in life. So what I've learned essentially is that these skill sets, what we've learned in this the third dimension, if you will, right, is that we practice it so often and we do things so often that it kind of gives you a roadmap when you start looking at problems, and it helps you see it in a different way. And I don't think, Denise, I've been asked this question before. And even I talked to my dad, and he said the same thing, which is I wasn't, as a kid, I was not really the type of kid that you would look at and be like, that guy's going to be a fighter pilot. And that's kind of a reassuring thing or thought, if you will, because a lot of people grow up and they don't know what their full potential is until you start doing things. And you can read as many books as you want. You can, read or listen to podcasts like this one, and, it helps your mind grow because I'm a big mindset guy. However, if you don't start taking action, that first step, if you don't put yourself out there, then you don't know. You don't know if it's going to work, and you don't know what your full potential is. In fact, the other day I was talking to a contractor who was doing some work on one of my properties, and he goes, well, how do you do this? How do you buy real estate? How do you start? And I said, well, you have to start. You have to take that first step. And so we walked through a couple basic things about where he was in life, what his financial situation was. Are you renting? Do you own? Those types of things. And we walked through it for about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. We talked. And then I said, well, your first step is to do X, right? From my vantage point, you don't have to do it, but if I was in your shoes, this is the first thing that I would do. And after talking about that, he looks at me and he goes, do you have any properties that I can rent a unit from? And I just kind of, in my mind, I shook my head because we had literally just finished a conversation on the next step. And the most important step was stop renting and buy a home and fix it up and then rent that one out and buy another home. And, because that's what he wanted to do. And he asks me at the end of the conversation if he can rent a unit from me. And I just my face hit my palm. I was like, dude, did you not what were you doing in the last 10 minutes when we were talking about this? But the important piece of that is, you get stuck in these little ruts, if you will, and you have to take that step out, and you might fail. The event might fail, but you pick yourself up and you try again. And that's kind of the story of my life. I wasn't as a kid, I wasn't cut out for any of this stuff, but through training and through dedication and study and a lot of hard work. And I say hard work because a lot of the time, about 95% of your effort will be fruitless. And that's called learning. So, as a kid, I loved airplanes. I grew up out in the country. So we had a lot of different experiences than kids do when they're city slickers. So riding dirt bikes and getting in trouble and shooting rodents with our BB guns and, just having a different life and seeing the world from a different lens and having parents and uncles and mentors throughout my life that introduced aviation to me, which really, really took off when we moved to Arizona when I was 16. And I, to make a long story short, essentially started flying in the civilian world. And man, I couldn't stop. I was playing baseball a lot, 5 to 7 days a week. I was playing on a club team, and I was flying and I was working, and I was young and burned a candle at both ends with a blowtorch. And I think the lesson from all of that was I had to sit back and go, where do I push? What is something that is fulfilling, that I know that I'm good at, and that I can make my path in the long term. And aviation was it. So I stopped doing a lot of other things, and I really pushed hard on aviation. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with my life, is with a real estate business and, writing books and having websites and social media and, trying to discern if I should be starting a podcast and all of these things going on in life. And they're all good things. But this year, in 2023, I'm sitting back and I'm saying no to a lot of things because I need to kind of chew on where we're going and what provides the most impact and the most help for people. And one of those things is our Single Seat Wisdom book series, right? Like you had mentioned. I have a lot of other things that are teed up to do, but this is the year of saying no to a lot of things just so I can, work on the things that we have in process and just, focus on the family and live a little bit while sitting back and going, okay, what are the next 5 years? Where am I going to push really hard? And in 5 years, what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because we were having pretty much this conversation in the green room before we jumped on and went live. I'm doing a lot of the same things that you're doing. What do I prioritize? And as we agreed 20 minutes ago, priorities, they're critical, and they're a balancing act, which is, what you're doing right now. And I'm unpacking 3 things from what you just said. That was at the bottom. The second one, podcast, yes. Call me. I'll tell you how to do it. Really easy, really simple, without having to hire editors, and do it yourself. Do it live. Do it like I do. Costs you nothing. Seriously. Call me. I'll walk you through it. You need a podcast. You really do. I mean, I've been doing this for so long. It's second nature to me. And you said something too. Said, well, somebody said, well, why don't you have a podcast 15 years ago? And I said, what's a podcast? How do I do that? And I went on a podcast, and I enjoyed it, and I found out that I could do it too, and I've never stopped. But you have to take that step. The other thing is, the gentleman that the contractor that was talking with you, I'm hopeful that he, that was his first knee-jerk response. How do I rent from you? But now that he's probably had time to think about it, mull over it, chew on it, whatever you want to call it, hopefully he's picking some points out of there that he may not act on now, but down the road he'll remember the advice.
Yeah. Yep. There was a guy spraying weeds on my property, one of the properties, and he asked the same thing. He goes, this is my current situation. How do you do this? And we walked through. He goes, well, I'm trying to remember all of the things that you said. And I said, in training, even as a fighter pilot, when I'm done debriefing a student and looking at what happened during the flight, I try my hardest to have a debrief that is coherent so that they can remember, right? So a good test is to ask the student, okay, what is the most important thing you learned today? And if they answer that correctly, then that's kind of a pat on your own back saying, okay, I debriefed this student correctly and coherently, and they remembered what I was saying, and they were able to pick out the big thing, right? And I don't do any more than 3 things. Okay, so hey, on your next flight, on your next sortie, I want you to go out, and this is the one thing that I think will help you level up. And then maybe, okay, here's the secondary and tertiary thing that, might bite you, but here's the main thing. And with that, as I was talking to the guy spraying weeds, he got kind of overwhelmed, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing a good job of explaining this. And I said, okay, here's your first step. Just do this. It's a freebie. You've already got things going to do that. And then the second step is, here's X, here's Y. And he goes, okay, I can remember that, and I can start doing that. And that was a different conversation from the one that I had, I think it was just yesterday, right? But talking through that and seeing the spark come alive. And this guy was like, I want to travel the world. I want to own some real estate that pays for my life and, do those things, right? That's why people want to get into that, is because, not because it's incredibly fun owning real estate, but because it provides opportunities. And he goes, well, I thought I was just going to buy 3 rental properties, but now I think I could probably get 5. And I was like, dude, that's where you want to be, because you've let your mind see that. You can now visualize it, albeit it is very blurry, but as that goal at the end, as you define that in your mind and you let yourself see that. Robert Kiyosaki in his Rich Dad, Poor Dad book talks about, it's not that I can't afford it. It is asking the question, how can I afford it? So it's the how. It's letting your mind take that step and go, well, why not? Let me entertain this thought. Why not own 100 properties? Well, what's the cost? What's the cost of my life? What's my family situation? And just go, well, why not? If I wanted to buy 1, why not 5? And just asking yourself those questions and then going, well, how do I do that versus, well, I can't do that, right? It just stops that critical thinking. And it was kind of a little bit of a light bulb that popped in to his mind. And I think, Denise, having talked to you before and, listening to you and listening to the frustration behind you, you and I are very similar in the sense that I get the feeling that you are you're an inertia person, kind of like me. You can get things going, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that's definitely how I am. I love startups. I love starting business and getting things going, but then I kind of get bored, and that's where I can also get burnt out because I start too many things. And like I talked about,
I took an online test. That's so weird, Dom. I was waiting to jump on with you, so I came across this online test, and what the heck? And you just described what they told me was that I'm a great starter. I have terrific ideas, but man, I get bored easy. So if I don't sit and focus and smack myself around a good bit, which is annoying, by the way, when you have to sit yourself down in the corner. But you have to have that goal, and to have that goal means you have to have a beginning and an end. And I think I always not always, but I will frequently go, I'll get back to that. Guess what happens?
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. Yep. So and that's just, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's just part of knowing, I think it's etched in stone on the temple of maybe Apollo in Greece, but it's in Latin or Greek, probably Greek. It's basically know thyself. And so knowing your working talents and taking some of those personality tests, which none of them are perfect, but it's a exploration act that you can kind of start to learn about yourself and ask people, well, what do you think that I'm good at? But you won't know that unless you're doing things and you're taking action, right? So knowing your working talents, I've found that having owned several businesses, I'm good at the founding piece of it and getting things going. What I can do, but I really don't like doing, is I don't like doing any of the CEO type stuff. I just don't like it. I can do it, but I have since hired people to do those activities that I just don't like doing. And I think it's not being able to, it's maybe an act of humility which I need a healthy dose of that all the time. But just to go, hey, I'm not good at that. And it's just you're not admitting defeat. You are letting yourself run down the path that gives the most, acceleration, right? So what is that piece? And then knowing what your faults are. Where am I going to trip and where am I going to fall? And you get that through a lot of the,
which is even worse.
About.
I've been known to just go, I don't want to do this no more, and out I go.
Yeah.
And I've had to have talks with myself about that too. But one of the questions I wanted to and you mentioned prioritizing. You only do 3 things. I've done that for years. I call it the triune. 3 things is about all I can handle, because there's going to be number 1, your number 2, your number 3. Then there's going to be subcategories under that, and there's it's going to look like a family tree just when you're still on number 1, if you're really working it. So 3 is all I can handle, and I may not even make it through 3 if I overwhelm myself with, I want to say dementia, but that's not what I mean. Could be with minutia. Are they the same thing?
Okay.
Yeah. But it's just you have to stop overwhelming yourself. No question about it. And I've been really working on that, because my brain is like yours. I mean, I have this healthy, excitable, sometimes irritating brain that is brilliant and funny and works hard, and it wears me out. And I'm whining now. But it happens. So like you say, we have to figure out where we're going to step in the puddle and avoid the puddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't have said it any better.
Well, I think you did. I was just paraphrasing you. So you tell a story when you're online, when you're on stage, that you told me gets the most laughs from your audience. Can you share it?
Yeah.
Do we have time?
Oh my goodness. The most laughs. Did we talk about one on the first one? I don't want to duplicate a story.
I don't think so.
The most laughs. I think so, specific to being a fighter pilot, there's and maybe not the most laughs. It's kind of maybe a terrified laugh. But my life in general is just a accumulation of failures, right? That you can be a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of guy, and I tend to be the glass half full. I reframe things into something that helps me learn, right? So when I do have a failure, it's an opportunity for me to learn and grow from that. And when I talk to a lot of the younger students, because we started this during COVID. There was a class that was struggling pretty mightily in their training with all of the restrictions and everything going on. And so I started this program called the Competent Wingman. And it started with that class. And it grew from just me sending them weekly little bits of advice, 2-minute chunks of information, to the Single Seat Mindset website, which now it's a fully automated program that just gives little fighter pilot tips applied to life once a week while they're going through their training. And other people started to use that. And the reason I told you about that is I had a student walk up to me and say, I really appreciate you sharing these, essentially sharing these failures with us, because a lot of it was written by our group of fighter pilots that have, pitched into the effort. But initially it was just, hey, when I was a young guy, I did X, and this is what happened. This is how I, pulled myself up by the bootstraps and got back to it. And one of those stories is, how did I get my call sign Slice, right? And so I was in a fighter squadron over in Japan, and our squadron mascot was he was a samurai. So the samurai sword slicing through stuff, it kind of fits there. But then I was out on a training sortie, and I was young. I was still learning a lot in the aircraft. I had probably less than 100 hours in the F-16 at the time, and I broke a training rule and pointed at my instructor pilot too long with my jet while I was trying to simulate shooting missiles. And that was the goal of the day, was to try to kill the other aircraft that was simulating, enemy tactics essentially. So I pointed him too long, and what ended up happening was we did a close pass, and we passed. We were supposed to stay more than 500 feet away from each other, and I think we were inside of 100 feet, which, going that fast, pointing at another jet, the closure rate, if you can imagine going 100 miles an hour on the freeway and another car passing you right by your rear view mirror, or right by your exterior mirror, going 100 miles an hour the other way, your closure rate's 200 miles an hour, because that's how fast both vehicles are going. Well, our jets that day were going several hundred miles an hour apiece. So you can imagine how fast that happened. And it's kind of a shaky, scary laugh when people learn about that story, because it was a humbling experience. And it was a near, they talk about a near miss. And if you nearly miss something, didn't you actually hit them? Well, they call it a near miss because, you nearly died. And that's kind of the lesson I took from that and moved forward with was, hey, just because that happened, I failed at that event. Yes, I almost died. We can learn something from that. And then I ended up getting named Slice because they said the fighter pilot said I tried to slice my instructor pilot in half. So I now get to have that very visceral, story and that feeling that I carry with me for the rest of my life, because it's my call sign. And I almost died. And so that's kind of where I got that. And I'm actually grateful for it, because I've been called a lot of other things that are not nearly as good as maybe just a PG, call sign like Slice. And you can use your imagination on what you think I've been named before.
I'm not on the radio. I'm not going to go down that road. Yeah. Okay. So, and I remember you telling about that story. I cannot remember if it was during one of our conversations off air or if it was on our last podcast, but either way, it's a fascinating story. So if it's repeated, I don't mind at all. I think it's a fascinating story. So tell me, you've been an instructor for the majority of your life. Violin, math, downhill ski instructor, civilian flight instructor, fighter pilot instructor. What are you doing right now, today, that is bringing you, I guess, all of these things that you've done throughout your life, they've brought you to where you are now. What is the thing that you're most proud of right now?
The project. Well, so what I'm most proud of is my faith. As a Christian, that has really, I was actually reading this morning. This isn't a humble brag or anything, but I was reading what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5. So he's got the Beatitudes and all this stuff, and these are literal truth bombs that I violate very regularly in my life. But that, I think, is what I'm most grateful for, is kind of my Christian background and having that connection that is, it's in the spiritual dimension, which I think a lot of people don't really connect with nowadays, right? The mind, body, spirit piece of it. And you and I probably get stuck in this trap quite a bit, because we feed our minds, we feed our bodies, but then what are we feeding our spiritual or our that other dimension that is not tangible? So I'd say that's the most, I'm grateful for that aspect of my life, and to have my wife that supports that, and she does it a lot better than I do. But from a business standpoint, I'm fairly grateful for all of the stuff that's happened in the background. But the one thing, if I was to pick one thing that has given the most fruit and has provided such a different approach and view on life, is the Single Seat Wisdom book series that I started years ago and it was during COVID, right? So I looked at COVID as a way to grow. And I remember talking with my younger brother about it, and I said, dude, I don't know, COVID sucks, right? All of the things that are happening, the masks, the lockdowns, everything, right? It sucks. However, during COVID, I said, there's going to be something that grows. You can choose to grow or to wither and die during this time frame, and that's your choice. You can level up, or you can sit back and be a couch potato like most of the people probably did, and just woe is me and adopt a victim mindset and crash and burn. But I'm not going to do that. And what grew out of it was essentially I was mountain biking one day, and I was like, man, Single Seat Mindset is the parent company. But I started asking fighter pilot instructors and just fighter pilots. I said, hey, do you have a short story that you would like to publish? And I can do all that work because I've published books before. And can we work together and get a bunch of these stories on paper? And we'll call it Single Seat Wisdom, which is just stories, short, impactful stories that you can read in less than 10 minutes. And it's a compilation book that grew into a series. So we published volume 2, in 2022, and we're working on volume 3 right now. And I think that book, the reason why it has such a large impact and it's so fruitful for me is that when I started Single Seat Mindset, that company, a couple months into it, I made the decision to not keep the money, to give it away. And so we give it to a children's cancer nonprofit called the Anna Schindler Foundation. And the funds go to supporting children that are in the hospital and they're going through cancer treatments. And as of this recording, we are over, I believe, $34,000 just on, just from Single Seat Mindset and from these fighter pilots that give donations that we can track to the foundation. So they're giving their story, so they're giving back via story, and they're also giving monetary contributions to this children's cancer nonprofit. And it's really cool because it's not about me. The books are written, each series, each volume has 20 short stories. As you know, you've I don't know if you've read the whole first volume. But,
oh yeah, I've read them both.
If you're busy like you and I, the books are great. They're designed to be less than 1,500 words roughly each chapter. So you can sit down and you don't have to worry about committing to a book. You can just read a story and set the book down and put it on your coffee table and come back to it later, because each story is very unique. Each has a different message at the end of it and just really impactful. So I even enjoy reading the stories, and as you can imagine, just publishing a book and getting busy individuals to contribute monetarily and then also contribute their story and open up about that and then go back and forth and do all the tedious details of writing a book, that I don't much care for. However, there have been other people that have, kind of as I started to take action and, publishing the first book, and then we republished it last year just because it needed some edits and some improvements. But other people, there's a girl that volunteered to edit and to look at all of the chapters before I even have to pay to send them off. So I've been super blessed and impressed with the people that have kind of come out of the woodwork, and they go, dude, this is a great idea. Let's keep it going. So that's kind of our big push, our big thing that, when, after I'm gone, the books will be around so people can still read these stories. And it's, it's been such a cool project.
It's an amazing project. And I really, really love the fact that, the funds go to a foundation. I think that's amazing. It's one of the big reasons I wanted to get you on the first time. But here's the thing about this book. Look, our history is constantly being rewritten. I don't watch mainstream media because I think it's bad for you. I just don't watch it. I do know what's going on. I do get my news, but I get it from somewhere other than largely American media. And it's a shame, but it is what it is. But there are so many people these days, it seems, that they're anti-everything. They're anti-history. They want statues pulled down. I live in the South. Leave our Confederate statues alone. Seriously, what in the heck? But if you read these books, and I've read both of them, and I'll read the next one when it comes out, this is history. This is current. Some of these things may happen 10, 20 years ago for these guys, but it's still current history, and it's real history. It's not made up nonsense. These books are important, just from historical perspective in my mind. Get their stories, get them down, and don't let anybody say, oh, that's baloney. It didn't happen. It happened.
So I'm curious to ask you, as you read through those stories, and maybe you haven't thought of this, but what is if you could pick one underlying theme, or one, maybe not even a theme, maybe just a word or an idea, as you read those stories, what do fighter pilots have in common that other people could learn from? Like, what is
Respect.
You don't have to answer right now. What's that?
Respect. This is what I've always picked up from them, from you. Y'all seem to respect everything, the air you breathe, the people around you, the people who may fail you, the failures that you had. You respect everything, and you behave accordingly.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to say thank you. I wish I always had that. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that. I think over time I have come to grow into that, and I still have a long ways to go. But thank you for saying that. I do respect all of their stories and their upbringing and all that kind of stuff. And I just look back and I'm like, okay, I learned from those mistakes, but I'm here now, and I learned from that stuff. And there's some people that they pick up on that earlier, and they excel at those aspects. But for me, being kind of pig-headed and stubborn, usually I learn the hard way, which is, I've done it I'll do it my way, right? Which is not the right way, right? So just kind of sitting back.
You're describing me.
I think there's even a song about that, right? I'll do it my way, which is actually, I was at a men's conference this past weekend with some of my friends, and one of the speakers said, I think that the evil one, or the devil, right, he'll do it his way, and look at how that ended up. And so I just kind of sat back and went, okay, well, where does God want me to go? Where is my life going? How do we give back and make things better to respect this amazing life that we have? But I appreciate you saying that, because I had a different idea, and I was
share. What do you read?
So I think the respect piece of that, maybe it's the profession that kind of engenders that from an outside viewpoint, which is even I sometimes step out to the jet and I just look at the aircraft. I'm like, wow, they're letting me do this again. Whoever they are, the big bureaucratic military system is letting me do this again, and it's an incredible responsibility and just an incredibly fun profession. It wasn't always fun because it was a lot of work, but now it is a very incredibly fun profession and job to have. And so from my vantage point, I read a lot of these stories, and the theme that I pick up on is one word. It's action. And I kind of hinted at this before, but I think if you're trying to start a business, or if you're trying to get something off the ground, or you're trying, like, was it Yoda that said, do or do not, there is no try? So it's action. And if you look at all of the stories that these fighter pilots write, all of those stories are a byproduct of them putting something into action and trying. I mean, the story that just popped into my mind is Bodie Davenport. He wrote a story in the second volume, and the cliff notes to it were he tried. He got accepted to a school, and then that one didn't work, and then he went to another school, and then he went through school and he applied to be a fighter pilot, but then it didn't work, and then he went back and forth, and he just kept. He went. He was a ramp rat, so he would work on airplanes and refuel aircraft and do that kind of stuff and be around airplanes. And he thought he wanted to get into aviation, so he started flying. But basically, he was just taking action. And as you are taking action, you start to learn. And a lot of times, I mean, I don't remember the exact statistics, but I think Michael Jordan missed his shots most of the time, right? So I think he made maybe 26% of his shots, but and I could be misquoting that actual number, but way more than 50% of the time he failed. And I think it was even Wayne Gretzky that talked about you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So the underlying theme that I've picked up is action. And so if you read a story like our astronaut author, Johnson, he has a completely different view on life because he's literally been to space. So his chapter was plan, execute, debrief. And I think the important thing is if I was on the other side of the line, right? So you and I, Denise, we've talked about this. We are action takers. And a lot of times that leads to burnout because you're taking so much action. You haven't sat back and discerned, well, where do I really need to push hard? Whereas the other side is they haven't even started. So they're stuck in this planning phase and they're figuring. I haven't figured out what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying. And it's like, well, stop trying and start doing. And as you put, and the way to do that, to jump over that hurdle, is to essentially plan enough to get going. But then we all have 24 hours in the day. So you need to put it on the calendar and have, if you need to, have somebody hold you accountable to it. But plan, go, hey, for the next 3 months, I'm gonna plan. And I'm going to talk to people and I'm going to get this on paper, do whatever you need to do. But then on March 1st, I'm going to wake up that morning and I'm going to start executing. So plan, execute, debrief. And then at the end of the day, after I've executed, I'm going to debrief myself, or I'm going to go over what actually happened and say, did my plan work? And at the end of every day, or even during the day, I can be tweaking my plan, and then I can start to execute at a higher level, and then I can debrief myself again. And so I think that was kind of the underlying theme, is how do I put things into action? And a lot of these fighter pilots, some of these stories, even some of the authors are my close friends, and when they write their story, it just blows me away because you think you know a lot about somebody, and then they send you a story like this, and you're like, dude, I never knew that about you. That's amazing. And so I even get to, the fruits from that is I get something out of it too, because I'm not. Nobody is completely altruistic. I get something out of it. So I get the good feels of helping children going through cancer treatments, the good feels of having another book that we can, read and share with our kids and share with other people. But then also I get the first the first draft of these stories. So the nitty gritty of this is just word salad sandwich on paper, and we get to tweak it from there. And that is, it's a incredibly time-consuming process. However, it's very fruitful, and man, is it so fun when that book, it never gets old when the first book gets to us, or, it gets published and the first book shows up in the mail and you get to actually hold it in your hand. But yeah, that was kind of long-winded, but I think the big thing, the overarching theme that I've picked up on is that a lot of these fighter pilots would be where they were if they didn't take action.
Right. And for the audience, I'm looking at Single Seat Wisdom, Volume 2, and the men he have been talking about, the astronauts, Chapter 14. Why did I do that as a Valley girl? Chapter 14, Plan, Execute, Debrief by Greg Box Johnson. And the other one, Bodhi Davenport, is Chapter 9, There Is No Free Lunch. And I've actually had... You've sent me a little bookmark, and I actually had that one on Chapter 14, so I'm glad you mentioned that. So we're talking about an awful lot here, and to me it's all very important. You've got history, you've got your big why, you've been very clear about why you're doing what you're doing and how you've done it, and that you need to take action, no question. And I guess at this point, do you ask yourself anymore, how do you know if you're living a purposeful life? You must know that you are. If you don't know, I'll tell you, you are. But, is this a question that people just do what you're told, nobody gets hurt? But, people, I think, should ask themselves a lot, maybe not daily, but frequently, am I living a purposeful life? Why am I here? How am I being of service to other people? How am I treating myself? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the word is and, purposeful. So a lot of things get tossed around. And again, I think probably more on the practical side when like, what the heck does that mean to me? And a lot of it is a byproduct of knowing what not to do, right? So if you're trying to, these people that go on these diets or go through these diet cycles or whatever, it's like, well, have you thought about, for me, I was about 5 years ago, I was about 30 pounds overweight, and I was reading books and all this kind of stuff, and I hadn't really put a plan into action yet. But one of the books was fairly insightful, and it said, it's not really about what you're eating, it's about what you need to stop eating. So what I got from that was, okay, I need obviously less food, but then in my business life and to live something purposefully, I can't do everything, and I can't be good at everything. But what is my talent, and how do I use that talent to help others in the way that they want to be helped, or how do I help people the way that Jesus would help people, right? So I think at the beginning of the day is, people that pray, they talked about, well, what are your prayer intentions? And then I think there was, I don't know if I heard it or I read it, but I think Oprah did a class or something like that, and they basically said what they came up with all these big brain people is one word, and it's called intention or intentionality, right? So what is your intention? And you only get that if like you and I, we need a dose of not running at 100 miles an hour, and we need to stop and think. So I call it 5 minutes for freedom. But every morning, just sit down and go, at the end of the day, what is one thing that I can do today where I created some purpose in my life that is for the bigger why in my life? And you may not know that bigger why. In fact, many years will go by and you may not know that why. But if you're looking for it, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, right? So knock and it shall be open. Those types of ideas is the intention. And how do I know if I'm living a purposeful life? What's your intentionality behind what you're doing, right? So for me, the real estate business, it's I wouldn't say fun, but it does give us purpose because it gives us opportunities. However, the Single Seat Wisdom series books was much more purposeful because I sat back one day and I go, well, what's my intention today? What's my intention this month? What's my intention this year? What's my purpose? And I sat there and thought, my kids, when I die, can fight over all of my real estate and all of these things, these tangible earth things, and they can rip it all apart, tear it all down, and sell it all off and puke it away in one generation. It can all be gone. But they cannot travel around the world and pull these single-seat wisdom books off of all the bookshelves that they sit on. And that is more of a timeless it's a timeless project that can't be undone because it's already going. And so I think that may be, how do I live a life of purpose is asking yourself, well, if I do this project or I do this whatever, does it fulfill the bigger story of my life, or does it end? Does it stop abruptly, and is that going to cause me a midlife crisis every time that I go through these big boom bust cycles, kind of like the U.S. stock market? Is I get something going, I buy a big real estate project, we do all things, and it's profitable, and then we sell it, and then, well, what am I going to do with all that money? And what's my intention with that? Am I just going to hoard it? Am I going to take it to Vegas and blow it all at the blackjack table? Am I going to give some to charity? Is that purpose? Does that fulfill the bigger story of my life? And I think these books, right? That's if you could define one thing that I'm doing this year and pushing and kind of refocusing on is that project, because it's blown my mind that it was a hobby when I started out, and now it's become a business and an actual thing, this growing non-tangible monster of project, right? And there's some purpose behind it, and it's outside of myself. I think that's the biggest thing to sum it up is it's outside of me. Is it completely altruistic 100%? No, absolutely not. In fact, I get a lot of, good feelings from it, if anything.
Well, and listen, I think when I first met you, this was a pretty new project. I was commenting earlier in the virtual green room. We ought to record those. We have a lot of fun in there, but we can't. But we were talking about just so many different things. But the thing is, when I first got to know you, I hadn't heard of any of this. I think you were referred by Mike Capuzzi. I can't remember how you came to me, but once I started reading your story and then following you all over social, and recently you have been doing a spectacular job on your social media, and I compliment you. Because, these are stories that need to be told. They need to be shared. They are history. They're important. I mean, I'm looking at one of the passages right now, chapter 10, Missionize Your Business. That's a fascinating title. But I wanted to say, too, you were talking about not doing things, not taking that step. I call it procrastination. I've got a minor in it. My major is in sarcasm, but my minor is in procrastination. And I call that analysis paralysis. You are just going to talk yourself in and out of things. It's going to give you a stomach ache, and nothing's going to happen. Stop doing that. I had to learn to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And then, too, you were talking, I think it was about Oprah, and talking about, your daily thoughts, your daily prayers, your daily intentions. And I go a bit further with my intentions. When I literally talk to my ceiling fan, for some reason I'm always, on the couch with a cat on my lap looking at my ceiling fan when I'm expressing out loud, because it's a form of a prayer, I guess, what it is that I need, want, or desire that day. And I don't really like the word desire, but something that I really need assistance with. And I will always, if I don't really expect it's going to happen, I can tell. But if I expect that it's going to happen, I state my intention. I also, state my expectation of receiving what I'm asking for. It works.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
A process for me, two-step process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the I can't afford it versus how can I afford it. And when you let your mind, you have the right mindset and you approach it like you just said, you go, well, this can happen. And then all of the how starts to happen and it unfolds in front of you, just one step at a time. Because everybody's going to have their own different path. You can be on a path, pull out your machete, chop through the forest, and jump on another path. And you may not have even found that path if you weren't walking the one that you're on. But that intentionality is so powerful. It's not this fruity visualization stuff. That's kind of a trap in itself. We'll visualize the end goal, and I don't see the end goal because I'm not there and I haven't done it before. But I have an idea. It's very opaque. It's milky. I can't see it. I can't grab onto it. I can't define it yet. However, I do know that this is, if you are in analysis paralysis, just go, well, what is the first step, right? What do they say? The journey of 5,000 miles starts with the first step or something along those lines, right? So just, if you're stuck figuring, well, what's the first step? Well, I'm going to just write down what I'm afraid to do or whatever, right? So just do one thing at a time, because we're humans. We can only do one thing at a time. We can't multitask. And then just start doing that. It'll unfold in front of you. And if you have that intentionality behind it with, like you said, I think one thing that was powerful that you mentioned was you can kind of almost feel if it's not going to happen, right? And that's maybe a sixth sense. And I think that's important to kind of get, knowing yourself and going, hey, I don't know if that's something that will actually work, but you'll never know if you don't try and you don't start with that first step. And
exactly.
You
You have to start. I mean, you just really must start. And, it's a platitude. We hear it all the time. But honestly, if you don't put that one foot out in front of you, you're just going to stand there in an awkward position. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, Dom, before I let you go, we've got about 5 more minutes. What are the top 5 tips that you would have liked to have known when you were starting out as a wannabe peak performer, because you are definitely a peak performance. So what can you share with the audience?
Well, so I think it's important to even narrow that down more, right? You said you can do one thing and maybe up to three. So let's just talk about big three. I would say the first one is you need to know what to avoid, what foods to avoid, what bad habits to avoid. And mine was avoiding the achievement hamster wheel. So that's kind of number one. The second one is if you're in business or even in just daily life, you need to build a team around you that you can influence and or utilize in a way that helps you with your bigger goals, because the people that are closest to you obviously are going to, what do they say? The top 5 people that you spend the most time with are going to have the most impact. So avoid the achievement hamster wheel, build a team that you can control. And then the third one is what we had talked about earlier, which is what Box Johnson wrote about in Single Seat Wisdom Volume 2, which is plan, execute, debrief. So how do I avoid the achievement hamster wheel? Well, for me, I started going to bed a little bit earlier so that I could wake up a little bit earlier and I could start my day with that intentionality like we had talked about. So call it 5 minutes for freedom, 5 minutes of prayer, whatever you want to call it. Just you need to have some time in the morning. And if you don't have 5 minutes, Denise, then I can't help you. So spending 5 minutes to just chill, don't look at the news, and just kind of think about your day. If you're a spiritual person, you need to pray. You need to maybe just sit there and discern where you're going in the day. The next one, build a team you can control or help you get to your end goal is important, because they're going to provide a different perspective that you may not see. All right, so that's important. Do you build the team all up front? No. In fact, the team that I had in my real estate company, I hired about 75% of them in the first year because they were just the wrong people on the team. So what do they say? Hire slow, fire fast. And I did that backwards. So avoid the achievement hamster wheel, build a team you can control, and then plan, execute, debrief. Plan enough to get going. And as you're executing, be debriefing yourself, saying, hey, is this working? Is it not? And then tweak your plan so that you can fix that. But if you don't start taking action, then you're not going to achieve any level of competence, and you definitely won't be a genius at what you're doing. So, focusing on the debrief specifically is the hardest part, especially if the event failed, not you as a person, but the event failed, I think is the key ingredient there. And if you succeeded, you need to ask yourself if it was luck. Because if it was luck, then maybe your plan sucks and you just don't know it. So those are kind of the big three, is don't get stuck just doing things. Make sure that you spend time to think about it. The people around you are going to help you with that on your team. And then as you're going through your day, your life, plan, execute, debrief. Debriefing being, I think, probably the most painful piece, but the one that needs a lot of attention, just so that you can retweak your plan and execute at a higher level.
I'm glad that you're really stressing debriefing, because I'm sitting here thinking, do I debrief that early? I really don't. I do pretty much everything else that we're talking about, but, well, by debriefing, here's what I do. I don't sleep well, so when I know I just never have. I catnap. Sleeping is not one of my bigger skills, and I don't worry about it. But when I know I'm actually about to go to sleep, I can feel myself kind of sinking into the mattress. Whatever has bothered me that day, or I don't have an answer for it, or I need some advice, or a God wink, I will literally, again, out loud, because, again, it's a form of a prayer, I think, and I will turn it over to my subconscious for review. And at 3:18, I promise you, I'm not making this up, 3:18, I wake up, I've got the answer. I may not like it, but I've got the answer. So that's about the only thing I do to debrief. I need to get better about it, though. So I just wrote that down, debrief. Dom says debrief. And you're right. I mean, we go. I mean, I jump in the shower. I try to relax. I get into bed. I'm reading. My brain is going zit, zit. It's like a fly is in there. It's really annoying. And eventually I can go to sleep. But I don't think to say, well, what did you do today, Denise? What was so great that you want to do it again tomorrow? Oh. So You just taught me something, and thank you for that.
Thank you. I had a great time, Denise.
Well, and listen, when the new book comes out, you're coming back, right?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it again.
Okay, good. Okay, before I let you go, definitely. Before I let you go, do you have anything else you want to share with the audience, and where can they find you?
Yep. So singleseatmindset.com. So single as in one, seat as in a single seat fighter jet. Singleseatmindset.com is our runway. So you can take off there and kind of see everything. It's got links and the Competent Wingman program and ways to get a hold of me and all the goodness is there in one spot.
Excellent. And the book, of course, both of them can be found on Amazon. I'm not sure. I think one of them may be free on Kindle right now if you have unlimited. I can't remember, but I think it is.
I believe so. Yep.
Okay. I think it's the first one. Either way, grab these books and listen, devour them. So, Dom, thank you so much. It has been wonderful speaking with you, as always. And I thank you for all of the terrific tips and the advice that you share with the audience. And I'm definitely going to get much better about debriefing. Never occurred to me. Now it's stuck in my head, so I'll let you know how that goes. And before we say goodbye, if you get a 318 email going, it didn't work, that's from me. So you might have to walk me down from the ledge. But seriously, I'll keep you posted because it just never occurred. So before we say goodbye, I would like to remind our audience to be sure to look for us in iTunes, Audible, Stitcher, anywhere that you consume your business podcasts. The truth is you can't throw a stick on the internet without hitting your partner in Success Radio. So find us and take us along on your success journey. Dom, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.